Star Trek The Next Generation, Starfleet Academy, Book Number 4, Capture the Flag. Chapter 5. Geordi took his first step on Sapphire without remembering the difference in gravity. He bounded a meter into the air, landed off balance, and promptly fell down. Jenna bounced behind him and lifted him up with ease. "Come on, Captain," she grinned. "You shouldn't look goofier than the rest of us." But everyone looked goofy for the first few minutes as they bounced around like children in a playpen. The Tellarite, who had never been a lightweight before, was having the most fun. "Look at me!" he called, taking a leap and sailing through the air. "Careful," Geordi warned them. "Remember what the lieutenant said about coming down. I don't want to start out short-handed." "Yes, sir," said Kareem, who promptly did a high flip and landed on his feet. "See? No problem. Oh, I wish we could play basketball here. I could dunk one." Geordi laughed and shook his head. Well, he couldn't blame them for having fun. They were almost like a troupe of acrobats, leaping and flying all over the place. Altos, the tall Andorian, was the only one having trouble keeping his balance. Thought Geordi. By accident, he might have done something very smart. On Sapphire, it might be better to have a team that's small and light instead of big and clumsy. Geordi took some time to study their surroundings. This part of Sapphire was a vast plain with large, weird limestone formations. The limestone gave the soil and rocks a green, chalky appearance. There were no trees, just a few scraggly bushes, but he decided you could hide an army behind some of those big boulders and arches. "Geordi," called a voice. He looked over to see Talara standing on top of a large boulder, almost 100 meters away. She jumped off the boulder and ran toward him with long, leaping strides. She covered the 100 meters in a matter of seconds. "Wow," said Geordi. "That's incredible." "Not really," said the Vulcan. "Perfectly normal, given the relative gravity. Be careful when jumping onto the limestone. It crumbles easily." She pointed toward the boulder. "I believe I saw our camping equipment over there." "Let's go," said Geordi. Without planning it, the trip to the boulder became a race. To Geordi's surprise, the albino cadet Megan beat all of them. Talara ran a close second. "I have to get in the shade," explained Megan. "I can't stay out too long in the sun." Atop the pile of equipment was an older cadet. He was fast asleep. "Excuse me," said Geordi. "Are you our survival expert?" He blinked awake. Are you guys here already?" "It would appear we are," answered Talara. The red-haired cadet staggered to his feet. "I'm Russ Wilmot. Pleased to meet you. Excuse me for sacking out, but I was up all night on the OpsCon. Do any of you know anything about camping?" "I do," said Kareem. "Me too," said Jenna. Russ yawned. "That's great. Well, here are your tents. Put them up." Under the guidance of Kareem and Jenna, the 3 tents were assembled. Each was supposed to sleep 4 people, but Geordi had his doubts. He assigned one tent to the 3 young women, Talara, Jenna, and Megan. He assigned another one to the 2 largest members of the green team, Altos and Zamusta the Tellarite. He took the 3rd tent for himself, Kareem, and Vernok the Saurian. Russ Wilmot finally proved useful in explaining to them how to use the portable toilets and inflate the sleeping bags. He also explained how to prepare their food, which came in sealed pouches. By twisting the pouches, chemicals mixed and generated heat that cooked the enclosed food. The tuna casserole tasted surprisingly good, thought Geordi. "Everything you see here," Russ explained, "is typical survival gear on a shuttlecraft. So if you ever cross-land a shuttlecraft, you'll get to do this all over again." "Russ," said Jenna, "are there any tips you can give us about capture the flag?" Russ smiled. "I'm not supposed to. I was on a team that finished 3rd, so I'm not sure I could be much help anyway. There are many different strategies. Remember, 1 or 2 people can cover a lot of ground, and to hit your coup meter, they have to catch you first." No one interrupted him, but Russ wasn't going to say anything else. He looked toward a mountain range in the distance. Its strange spires and arches glinted in the setting sun. The sun goes down quickly on Sapphire, Russ remarked. You got plenty of food and water. I'm sure you can figure out how to turn on the lanterns. We'll contact you when it's your turn to play. Oh, good night and good luck. They thanked him, and Russ tapped his comm badge. Wilmot to Glenn, one to beam up. A second later, he disappeared in a sparkling column of light. Now they were all alone on a strange planet, where the rocks were green and people jumped like kangaroos. Geordi looked across the barren plain and could see the lights of other encampments, other teams. They could jog to one of those camps in a minute, but why? Lieutenant Pontano had been right when she had told them to stay away from the other teams. They were the enemy. Geordi turned around and found every member of the green team staring at him. Well, Captain LaForge, said Jenna. What now? Geordi sighed. Listen, you guys, if you aren't comfortable with me giving orders, we can choose somebody else. There was a chorus of protests. No way, said Cream. We'll follow you anywhere. To victory, bellowed the Tellarite Zamusta. He crinkled his pig-like snout. Megan smiled. That's right, Geordi. You made us all feel good about ourselves by choosing us first. Now you've got our loyalty, and you're stuck with it. Okay, said Geordi. But we won't really rub it in their faces unless we beat them. So let's beat them, crowed Vernock. It was the first thing the little Saurian had said all day. Geordi nodded seriously. All right. I've heard 2 pieces of advice that make sense. Somebody at the academy told me to plant my flag high. Let's make sure we do that, because we don't want to make it easy for them to get it. Plus, if we put it on top of a formation with lots of archers and hiding places, we can lay in waiting for them. He shook his head. But those other teams have some strong people. If we get into a wrestling match with them, I don't know how we can score a coup first. Captain, said Zamusta, I noticed that there...
I noticed that there are vines growing all over the rocks and ground. Perhaps they're strong enough that they can be woven into nets.
Great idea, said Jenna. Even if it just slows them down for a second, it'll be worth it. Fine, agreed Geordi. We'll divide our team into 2 parts, defenders and scouts. The defenders will get to work making nets as soon as we beam down. I think it's good advice that we only need 1 or 2 people to be scouts. Their job is to find the enemy's flag and the enemy's troops as soon as possible. He touched his visor. I may be able to see things with this that the rest of you can't, so I'll be a scout. Megan, with your speed, you'd make a good scout, but you have to stay out of the sun. So Talara will be the other scout. Geordi pointed into the quickening darkness. Since Talara and I will be out there, I'm putting Jenna in charge of our defensive positions. Maybe Altos should be the last guy they have to get through. If I get captured, Jenna takes over. If Jenna gets captured, well, then we're in a lot of trouble. There was laughter all around. When it died down, Geordi thought he heard a sound. All of the green team members were gathered around him, so he didn't know what could be out in the darkness scraping around. Did anybody hear anything? He whispered. I did, whispered Talara. Quickly, Geordi grabbed one of the lanterns and shined it into the darkness. A furtive figure dashed away. Kareem jumped to his feet. A crummy spy!
Fiends!
Shouted Zamusta. Let's get him, snapped Jenna. I think he was just coming close when we started to laugh, said Geordi. But this tells us something. Those other teams want to win as badly as we do. How can they spy on us? Asked Megan. They haven't even told us which team we're playing. They're just trying to get an edge, said Geordi. Any way they can. They probably sent spies to every other camp. Nobody said we couldn't use spies. Or nets, whispered Jenna. She looked around. I wonder where the actual playing field is. If we could get a look, it might help. Geordi shook his head. We're not going to go bouncing around looking for it in the dark.
What are we going to do?
Asked Zamusta. Geordi shrugged. Anybody know any good campfire songs? Nah, said Kareem. It's better to tell ghost stories around a campfire. No, said Altos, examining a pouch of spaghetti. Better to eat. In the end, everyone did whatever they felt like doing. While Kareem told African ghost stories, a few cadets ate and others slept. There was no moon over Sapphire, but the night sky glimmered with millions of stars. Geordi asked Talara to take a walk with him. He wanted to get to know the slim Vulcan who would be venturing into enemy territory with him. "Have you any thoughts about what we'll be doing tomorrow?" he asked. She cocked her head thoughtfully. "Only that we must be willing and able to outrun pursuers." "Yes," said Geordi. "I had thought about that. That's why I picked you to come with me." Talara nodded. "There are other reasons why I am a logical choice." "There are?" asked Geordi. "Yes. We Vulcans are stronger than we look. Strength may be very important tomorrow. Plus, you are our leader. You must be protected at all cost. If you give me an order to sacrifice myself to protect you, I will do it without question." Geordi laughed nervously. I don't think that'll be necessary." "It may well be," answered Talara. "Do not hesitate to ask it. As a Vulcan, I will sacrifice myself without feeling resentment. I am incapable of self-pity. When we locate their flag, it is imperative that you inform the others. You must be available to lead the attack." Talara looked straight ahead. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the one. "All right," agreed Geordi with a shrug. You can be my bodyguard." "A good decision," said Talara. Geordi chuckled. "I wonder if we'll play Jack Petty's team. Wouldn't you like to beat him?" She shrugged. Beating the gold team would be the same as beating the red or blue teams. "Really?" asked Geordi. "You wouldn't like to beat him just a little bit more? He is a jerk." Talara allowed herself the shadow of a smile. "As you say, he is a jerk." That was all Geordi wanted to know. Deep down, he was both afraid and anxious to face the gold team. He had never really hated anyone in his life before. Geordi wanted people to like him, and it bothered him that someone didn't. But now he and Petty were rivals, and there was nothing he could do about it but beat him. Later that night, Geordi curled up in his sleeping bag. Kareem snored softly beside him. Vernock, the little saurian, remained motionless on the other side with no covers around his thick reptilian skin. Geordi knew he had to sleep, but he couldn't. The excitement was too much. He had never pictured himself as a leader, but there was no doubt that's what his team thought he was. "I don't want to let them down." He considered the 8 members of the green team, himself, Talara, Jenna, Megan, Altos, Kareem, Zamusta, and Vernock. They were all loyal and determined to do their best. What more could he ask? With that comforting thought in mind, Geordi took off his visor and relaxed in the utter blackness. He was soon asleep. Geordi was awakened by a strange beeping, and it took a moment to realize it was his comm badge. He sat up and tapped the badge. "LaForge here." He reached for his visor. "Pantano here," said a familiar voice. "We've made a random selection. Your team will play the red team in the morning match. You have an hour to eat and get ready. Then we'll beam you up to the ship. From here, we'll beam you back down to the playing field." "I understand, sir." "Good luck. Pantano out." Geordi roused his teammates. "Get a good breakfast," he told them. "We go in an hour." "I don't know if there's any food left," muttered Kareem. "I think Altos and Zamusta ate it all." But there were plenty of packets of scrambled eggs and even coffee. Nobody said much as they ate. The full impact of what was about to happen had just dawned on them. They were to be pitted against fellow cadets in a combat zone. The fact that there were no weapons didn't make it any less serious. What would the Academy think of the losers? What rewards would there be for the winners? At least the day was fine, thought Geordi. Sunny, but a little cool, with no sign of clouds. Considering the sparse vegetation, he didn't think it ever rained much on Sapphire. After breakfast, they practiced jumping, running, and landing until the call came. "We're beaming you up," said Lieutenant Pantano. "Yes, sir," answered Geordi. He stood stiffly with his teammates until they had all dematerialized. When they reached the transporter room aboard the Glen, Geordi was surprised to see the cadet Swan and her red team were already there. Sidra Swan was a cocky young woman who stood several inches taller than Geordi. You could tell from the smirk on her face that she didn't think the green team was going to be much of a problem. Geordi glanced around his team. Except for Talara, they looked more scared than overconfident. Talara merely looked alert. Lieutenant Pontano produced 2 identical flags that were weighted at the bottom. One was red and the other green. She handed them to the prospective captains. "The flags must be placed in plain sight," she told them, "within 3 minutes of your arrival. They cannot be moved after that. The boundaries of the playing field are clearly marked by white stakes. If you go outside the boundaries or move your flag, your team will forfeit. During the game, many of you will have a coup scored against you. Because there's a slight delay in beaming up, simultaneous coups are not uncommon. If you get captured, you'll end up right back here. Just walk down the corridor to the lecture hall, and you can watch the rest of the game on the view screens." She smiled. "We'll have some cold lemonade waiting for you. There will also be a medic to patch up your bruises. But remember, this is not a war. This is just a game. Don't get overly rough. A gentle tap on the coup meter is enough to dispatch the enemy." Pontano consulted her pad. "By random draw, the red team will be beamed down first, but they'll only have a few seconds advantage. Before you go, I want both teams to shake hands." Half-heartedly, the 2 teams shook hands. None of the players smiled. "Red team, take the transporter." Geordi felt his palms getting sweaty as he watched Cadet Swan and the red team vanish from the transporter platform. His heart was pounding as he stepped up upon the device. Jenna gave him an encouraging smile, but he could see that her fists were clenched. "Coordinates locked in," said the transporter operator. Lieutenant Pontano nodded. "Energize." Chapter 6. Geordi landed in a nervous crouch. Immediately, he began to look around for a high rock formation on which to plant the flag. This part of Sapphire looked similar to the area where they had camped, except for the white boundary markers that stretched into the distance behind them. "Start gathering vines," Jenna ordered the others. Kareem grabbed a long vine and wrestled several meters of it from the greenish soil, but he couldn't break off the last few centimeters. "We don't have any knives," he complained. "How can we cut the vines?" "No problem," answered Vernock. The little Saurian bent down and snapped the vine in two with his beak-like mouth. Altos used brute strength to rip the vines from the ground. Zamusta, Megan, and Jenna collected the vines, stripped off the leaves, and began to tie them together. "Use the thicker vines as a framework," said Jenna, "and use the lighter vines as the netting." Talara tapped Geordi on the shoulder and pointed into the distance. "Captain," she said, "I believe that would be an acceptable defensive position." Geordi followed her gaze to a weathered archway in the distance. The green rock looked like a giant donut that had been left outside too long. "That's far away," said Geordi. "We only have a minute or so left. Can you reach it?" "Yes," said Talara. She grabbed the flag from him and bounded off like a graceful gazelle. In less than a minute, she'd reached the top of the rock and planted the flag. The others cheered, and Geordi felt like his heart would bounce out of his chest. "Okay," he said. "We'd better get some people over here to defend it." "Altos, take the highest position," said Jenna. "Megan, you need to get out of the sun, so look for a cranny to hide in. The rest of us will gather a few more vines and come right over." The Andorian and the albino dashed for the donut-shaped rock. Geordi's comm badge beeped. "LaForge," he answered. "Talara here," came the answer. "We are close enough to each other to maintain visual contact, as well as communications. I suggest we proceed into enemy territory." Geordi took a deep breath. Right. He may have been the one in charge, but it was nice having people giving him good advice. Jenna smiled. "We know what to do, Captain. We'll fight to last cadet. You just find their flag and tell us what you want us to do." "Is that all?" asked Geordi. He was trying hard not to be overwhelmed. He took one last look at his ragtag army and felt a burst of pride. They weren't pretty or impressive, but they wanted to win. "If you're captured, there's no shame," he told them. "Just do the best you can." "Yes, sir," came the eager response. Geordi looked toward their flag. and saw Altos and Megan taking their positions on the archway. He tapped his comm badge. "Talara, let's move out." "Yes, sir," she answered. He saw the Vulcan woman leap off the archway and start running. Geordi began running as well, covering several meters with each stride. It felt good to be moving, but he reminded himself that the enemy was only 2 kilometers away. On Earth, a person in good condition could run 2 kilometers in about 10 minutes. On Sapphire, anyone could cover that distance in half the time. He stopped and touched his comm badge. "Talara, slow down. We want to spot them before they spot us." "Yes, sir," she answered. "Do you see the outcropping in the distance? It looks like a tower that is leaning." "Yes," said Geordi. "Let's meet there." A few seconds later, Geordi and Talara crouched behind the oddly shaped rock. Geordi estimated that they had reached the middle of the playing field. He could just barely see some boundary markers in the distance. Thus far, there was no sign of any red shirts. There was no sound and no breeze. It was eerie, as if he and the Vulcan were alone on the entire planet. "This is a quandary," said Talara. "How do we find their flag without being seen?" Geordi smiled. "We have a secret weapon. I'm guessing that most of them will be gathered around their flag, just as we have done. I'm going to adjust my visor to look for a large amount of body heat." "How do you adjust it?" she asked. "Usually in my head," answered Geordi. "There are a million impulses coming in. I just have to decide which ones to look for." Geordi concentrated as he scanned the barren horizon. He was looking for a telltale haze of extra heat that might indicate several warm-blooded creatures standing together. Finally, he found it. He pointed excitedly. "Look! Oh, I'm sorry you can't see it, but there's a definite haze beyond that field of boulders. I think they've put their flag back there." "That is not in plain sight," said Talara. "Well, it might be if you were standing on the other side of the boulders. Anyway, something is giving off heat over there." "We must get closer to confirm it," said the Vulcan. "Yeah," Geordi muttered. "They know I've got the visor, and that might just be a decoy. This is a hard game." "Ease of play is not the intention," said Talara. Geordi sighed. "All right, let's go. If they spot us, we escape together, away from our flag. Let's not lead them to it." The Vulcan nodded. "Understood." The field of boulders was like a giant rock garden. Greenish lumps stuck out of the ground at irregular intervals. As he and Talara got closer, Geordi was dismayed to see that the boulders were rather large, some 2 meters high. That was more than big enough for a person to hide behind. The red team had not planted their flag high, but they had chosen a good spot to defend. He motioned to Talara to stop. "I have to check in with the others." He tapped his comm badge. "LaForge to Pico." "Come in, Jenna." "I'm here. Have you found it yet?" "We think so," said Geordi. "There's a field of small boulders in the northeast corner. I think it's back there, but we have to go in for a closer look." "Take your time," said Jenna. "There's been no sign of the red shirts. Zamusta is our forward guard, and he has great eyes. Plus, we have our surprise already." "Good," answered Geordi. "I hope it works. Out!" There were no great leaps and bounds now. Geordi and Talara crept forward through the field of boulders. Finally, they saw their first glimpse of a red shirt jumping to the top of a boulder in the distance. Geordi and Talara dropped to their bellies and didn't move. It was then that Geordi realized he had made another good decision by accident. Their green tunics blended in with the ground better than any of the other colors. They lay there for several seconds waiting to see if they'd been spotted. "Permission to offer advice," whispered Talara. "Please," said Geordi gratefully. "I can move swiftly. Let me run up there and see if their flag is present." "You'll be spotted," whispered Geordi. "I know, but it does not seem likely that we can sneak up on them without being spotted, especially if their flag is in plain sight, behind a boulder. They are obviously playing a defensive strategy." "Yeah," thought Geordi. "They don't want to lose to the oddball team." "We'll both go," he said. "2 sets of eyes are better." Talara nodded. They rose to their feet and began running at full speed. There was no pretense of hiding. They wanted to see what there was to see and get out. Geordi marveled at the way they covered a considerable distance in only a few seconds. They jumped over the last row of boulders and almost fell into a meeting of the red team. Sidra Swan jumped to her feet with a shocked expression on her face. "Hey!" she yelled. Several members of the red team scrambled to surround their flag, which was planted on the ground. One cadet made as if to move the flag, then stopped, obviously remembering the rules. The rest of them just stared at Talara and Geordi. "Hi!" Geordi waved. Swan shouted, "Stevens and Moreo, after them!" Now Geordi and Talara were running for their lives, bounding like kangaroos over the rocks and bushes. Within a matter of seconds, Talara was several meters ahead of Geordi. He turned to see that the two red shirts were fast behind them, running with powerful strides. "What a jerk you are!" Geordi cursed himself. "You're going to be the first one caught." A minute later, they were spread out across the ragged plain. Talara was far ahead, Geordi was about 50 meters behind her, and the red shirts were gaining on him. He could see that Talara was headed toward one of the weird archways. Maybe, thought Geordi, she planned to make a stand there. Sure enough, she jumped halfway up the arch and scrambled out of sight. "Why are you stopping?" thought Geordi. "Keep going, you can outrun them." His communicator beeped. He tapped it, but he was too out of breath to say anything. He just gasped. "Talara here," came a voice. "Lead them under the archway. I will attend to them." "Can't," he gasped. "Sacrifice yourself." "I can," she answered. "If you lead them under the archway, I will know that is your wish. Talara out." Even at half his normal weight, Geordi's heart was pounding furiously, and his legs were starting to give out. He had a choice. Run under the arch and save himself, or let himself be captured and save Talara. What had she said? The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the one? He headed for the archway, still cursing himself for his stupidity, but he was their leader. Rightly or wrongly, his team was depending on him. He even slowed down to make sure his pursuers would follow him under the arch. Geordi couldn't see Talara as he ran under the rock formation. She was well hidden. He wanted to stop and help her fight, but he knew her ambush depended on surprise. He was about 40 meters ahead of the red players, so he stopped when he got that far beyond the archway. He fell to his knees, gasping for air. He saw Talara leap off the arch and take one red shirt by complete surprise. He vanished like a ghost. The other one attacked her, and they began to wrestle. In an instant, they were both gone. A simultaneous coup. Geordi collapsed onto his back and just breathed for several moments. Nobody was after him now, and he knew where their flag was. He supposed their mission had been a success, but he missed Talara. His comm badge beeped. "The forge here," he answered.
"Captain Itsubusta, they are attacking in mass. I count 5 of them coming fast. I'm falling back to our position. Out."
Wow, thought Geordi. After being taken by surprise, Swan apparently didn't want to take any more chances. She was going for an all-out blitz. Because it was high up on an archway, the green flag hadn't been hard to find. Geordi was torn about what to do next. After that long chase, he figured he was much closer to the green flag than the red flag. Should he go back to help them defend? It was 6 defenders against 5 attackers, almost an even battle. Counting the 2 Talara had taken out, that left 1 red shirt guarding their flag. Geordi couldn't stand it. He had to see how his defenders were doing. If the red attack was successful, he would never be able to get back to the red flag in time. He skirted along the boundary markers until he could see the giant donut in the distance. The battle was raging. Red shirts were climbing up the rock like ants, but he could see the small defenders jumping out of hiding places, throwing nets. Not all of the nets worked, but some of the attackers tumbled to the ground, thrashing about in the nets. They were easy prey for Jenna, Kareem, and the others. Then Jenna was captured. Megan disappeared. Kareem was gone. 2 red shirts were left, and they fell back to regroup. You could see Altos standing in front of their flag at the top of the archway, the last obstacle. You could hear Zamusta, who was laughing and taunting the red team. He saw Vernock scrambling around. Then Geordi saw something else. Another red shirt was running across the plain to join his comrades for one last assault. Their flag was unguarded. Geordi hit his comm badge. "The forge to Altos! You've got to hold them off. Their flag is unguarded. I'm going to get it. Aye, Captain, came the reply. They get no flag over me. Geordi ran across the plain faster than when he was being chased. Each stride gobbled up chunks of land. He could see the field of boulders in the distance. He could smell victory in every painful breath he took. Then came a beep on his comm badge. Altos to the forge. Better hurry. Just me and one of them left. Geordi did hurry. He bounded over the rocks like demons were chasing him. Once he came down at an awkward angle and rolled onto his back, but he scrambled to his feet and kept going. When he finally spotted the unguarded red flag, it was so beautiful, it was like a mirage. He bounded over the boulders like a wild man. He dived the last few meters and cradled the flag in his arms. He hit his comm badge, yelling, "I've got it!" He was answered by labored breathing. Finally, the deep voice of Altos replied, "No problem, Captain. Nobody left but you and me."